Welcome, everybody. Hello, and welcome to our first podcast from the Nutrition Collective, which we're calling the Practitioner's Edge. We're calling it that because we're bringing you cutting edge insights and knowledge in nutritional healthcare. And we'll be exploring the latest research and information that we're going to be presenting to you from expert speakers from around the world in our upcoming events. So today we're kicking off with our next symposium, which is on March 5th, which is on phytocompounds, solutions for stress, sleep, and metabolic balance. Joining us the symposium on March 5th will be Dr. Deanna Minich, Dr. Christopher Shade, who is the founder and CEO of Quicksilver Scientific, and Melanie Blefkin, who is the scientific expert and educator at Biogena. So they'll be unpacking in a lot more detail and diving deep into biological clocks and how nutrition and lifestyle medicine plays a crucial role. But what we're going to be discussing with you guys today is we obviously get the slides and the presentations and the information from our speakers in advance, which we look at and review to ensure that we're bringing you the latest knowledge. And we take from that the kind of key things that we find interesting and are new, and want to kind of give you a bit of a taster of what is coming in that session. But before we do that, I think let's introduce who we've got from the Nutrition Collective today. And I'm actually going to start with our founder, Romina, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Louise. Yes, I'm the founder of the Nutrition Collective, but most importantly, I am a nutritionist as well. And I have a fascination for anything to do with sleep because I love to sleep. So today's session is particularly interesting for me because I think for me, sleep has been one of the missing elements in my life. And I'd love to understand that more as a nutritionist.
Excellent. Thank you, Romina. Lucia.
Yeah, I am Lucia. I'm like Romina and like yourself, Louise. Also myself, I'm a nutritional therapist. And again, who's not interested in sleep? It's something that we see a lot in practice. And, you know, all of us are affected by lack of sleep in moments of stress. So I'm really excited about knowing more about what we can learn and how we can improve our own sleep and our clients' sleep. So really looking forward to this session and also discussing it with you. What are your key takeouts from Deanna Minich's point of view on phytonutrients, stress and sleep?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything that has been said, excuse me, by Romina and Lucia. As a nutritional therapist myself, and also sleep being, I think, a huge impact on all of our health. And I think what's going to be interesting in the session on March 5th and what we'll touch on today is this, and we have in the past actually at the Nutrition Collective talked about clocks and the different clocks within our body and how that's so important. So let's get straight into it and dive into the topic of circadian rhythms, different pronunciation, and internal clocks. What we're seeing in clinical practice as practitioners, as we've mentioned that we're all practitioners here as well, is poor sleeping habits and how that has a detrimental effect on overall health. And, you know, that is a key observation from Dr. Deanna Minich. And Romina, would you like to kind of kick off in terms of your observations in that area?
I mean, whilst I was writing the blog for this event, what I realized was that, you know, we talk a lot about circadian rhythms and it's so much more than sleep. It's about thinking about these disruptions we see in clinical practice of jet lag or light exposure or scrolling on the phone. And actually what Dr. Deanna says is it's not just about sleep. It's about what she calls circadian syndrome, which means we're looking at these patterns disrupting the immune system, the endocrine system, and you know, actually having an impact on all sorts of other systems within us.
And I think what's key is that is the impact on metabolic issues. And, the topic of metabolism and metabolic dysfunction is kind of runs through a lot of what we talk about at the Nutrition Collective and a lot of our events. And I know, Lucia, in your clinical practice, you deal a lot with metabolic dysfunction. What has been your experience in that area?
I see a lot. Obviously, stress is one of the biggest factors when we're talking about overall health. And, improving sleep, again, it's one of the key points. It's one of the basics. But what I found really interesting about these slides, we have the fortune to look ahead of the webinar. It's that we always, of course, ask our patients about their light exposure. Of course, we recommend vitamin D if they're not supplementing. But something I've never done, and I believe it's relevant, and I will start doing, is asking about their dark exposure. Because, in my questionnaire, I ask about if they're outdoors, and I do ask about sleep quality, but I never ask how many hours of dark exposure you have, because actually that's relevant for melatonin production. And I really like, when I don't want to spoil the surprise, but how Deanna explains us the complementary relationship between vitamin D and melatonin, and then how she also dives deeper about phytonutrients that can support melatonin production. I think this would be really interesting, especially also as we're talking about stress and how to improve sleep. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And Lucia, from that point, what I took was that, yes, we know about melatonin. Everybody knows about this. But what is the role of vitamin D and sleep? And this is where I wanted her to unpack that area.
Exactly. I found it really fascinating too, and I'm looking forward to hear it from Diana explaining us how to balance those two key nutrients to really improve our clients' sleep. Absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, and also, as Romina, you pointed out, this kind of new term of circadian syndrome, that we all know that it's important, but actually by giving it this label, as it were, just shows the impact it can have. And actually, all three of our speakers will delve into the different phytocompounds that are relevant and are supportive for us as practitioners with our clients. Let me move on to that leads me on to the kind of next big question around how we as practitioners can help our clients and patients realign their circadian rhythms, and the role of, as I said, phytocompounds and micronutrients play in this equation. Lucia, I'm going to come to you first in terms of what are your go-to circadian nutrients, I'm going to call them?
Well, obviously Diana explains some things that many practitioners know, like mentions the tart cherries, mentions the green tea, but I think that we're all going to be surprised because she really dives deeper. And I think it's very interesting that she dives deeper also in the concept of chrononutrition. So when the phytonutrients are more active or not. And I know this is an area that also really interests you, Luis, because we were discussing that before. But also you were really surprised about that.
Yeah, because we talk, everybody, anybody who knows Deanna knows the Eat the Rainbow.
Yeah.
And that's a term, I think, also as practitioners, that's a great way of describing to clients to get that variety and get that different color from what you're eating and what you're putting in your body. And also, we also know it's very important that what we eat and the impact it has on our body. But what Deanna is going to talk about in terms of what she calls chrononutrition is when we eat. So it's not just important what we eat, it's when we eat those different phytonutrients and the different compounds and the impact it has on our body. Romina, you wanted to
well, no, I was going
there.
to say I'd love to get an example about that of when to eat what. So if we're looking at tart cherries, that's the understanding. When do you have these tart cherries that increase melatonin levels?
Yeah, I mean, also, I think Deanna's going to delve into some recent research around resveratrol, which is obviously found in kind of red grapes, which has amazing antioxidant benefits. But the benefit of those antioxidants are only realized when you eat them at a certain type of day. So if you had like red grape juice in the morning, that has huge antioxidant benefit. But the research shows that if you drank that in the evening, it loses a lot of its antioxidant benefits. So that's the kind of key term around chrononutrition and timing of when you eat those foods. Now, we don't want to wrap our clients up in a kind of a headache of, oh my goodness, shall I eat this? And should I eat this? And when should I eat it? But I think there are some very simple learnings that are would have a huge impact on individuals that we'll delve into a lot deeper on March 5th. So that's what I'm really looking forward to, kind of diving into that a little bit more.
Because talking about clocks, I think it's also very interesting that Deanna's going to talk about the different levels of hormones at different times of the day and at different age stages, which I believe it could open the doors to provide even more personalized plans and given kind of more fine-tuned advice to our clients. Again, as Louise said, it's not that we want to be prescriptive, but, understanding, probably giving the best indication of what time to exercise to our clients for maximum effect. And also Deanna is going to talk about fasting windows. And finally, she's going to bring some clarity on how to match the fasting windows with our different hunger hormone levels, insulin levels, and cortisol levels. So I'm looking forward to hear from that. And obviously, I'm looking forward to the conversation and the questions from our crowd that would really amplify and add more to the conversation.
Yeah.
But I think this is why having these snippets is important, because, when you're talking about internal clocks, Lucia, you said we have the main internal clock and then we have these peripheral internal clocks.
Yeah.
And when we were reading the notes, you said to me, oh, I didn't know that the gut microbiome has an internal clock. And I was like, oh, I didn't pick up on that, but it's true.
Yeah. I found it so fascinating because it makes sense, right? Microbiomes are living creatures and they must have their own internal clock. But, as a nutritional therapist, the three of us work a lot on the gut, but I never thought about, following the internal clock and also the other peripheral clocks. So this is what I really like about Deanna Minich, is that she has simple concepts and then really dives deeper and brings a complete new light and point of view that can really elevate our practice.
Yeah, because it's also we all know that everything is interconnected. But I think what we're going to be seeing on March 5th from all of our speakers is, we all know how important the gut is, and it's the foundation, second brain, it's often referred to. But, I think the latest research is coming out that is kind of saying how these microbes, they have their own internal clock as well, that they respond to light exposure, different food intake, the sleep-wake cycle. So that's why, again, sleep is so important. And, when we eat different, phytonutrients, is having an impact on our gut microbiome as well.
And also, Louise, the type of bacteria and how active they are during the day actually impact these circadian nutrients and that internal clock. Yeah. So I found that interesting, the type of bacteria, and they're active throughout the day. And there's so much to learn in that world as well.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, Romina, this is why we're kind of doing these kind of, we're calling it a podcast, but kind of teaser sessions in terms of what's coming up, because we do obviously review the presentation content beforehand. The session is live, so the symposium will be happening live between 4 and 7 on March the 5th. With our expert speakers. But what we can give to you is, like, if you see the heading phytocompounds and micronutrients and the impact on sleep and metabolism, you may think, oh, I've heard this all before. There's nothing new. But this is what we kind of pride ourselves on at the Nutrition Collective, is bringing you the latest, the new, the cutting edge information. So that's what we will, you'll be able to dive much deeper by tuning in and asking your questions around what you might have heard from us today that you might want to know more on, and dive into a little bit deeper. You'll be able to do that on March 5th. Um,
I,
to kind of round up our kind of discussion, and without kind of giving everything away before next Thursday, what would you say, Romina, for you is kind of your key takeaway that you want to kind of delve in a little bit more detail next week? Kind of what kind of questions would you want to find out more about with all three of our speakers?
I mean, since we're on the topic of the gut, for me, if the type of bacteria affects, the circadian rhythm, what kind of bacteria should I be having when we're looking at prebiotics or probiotics? What are the type of bacteria that will help me with sleep and will help me to regulate that circadian rhythm? For me, that's the question I'd like to ask Deanna.
Yeah.
For me, my key takeaway of thing that interests me more is really understand about fast windows and especially related to age groups. And again, also she talks a lot about the different exposure, I mean, for circadian rhythms, but it's not only light and dark, but also how forming habits and having routines impacts that. For me, it would be really interesting to understand how to incorporate that in a plan for a client and how to really create life-changing habits, because I believe we're working in holistic nutrition. We have a holistic approach to our clients and how to integrate that more and better in my practice to really give that extra edge and help my clients, but also help myself really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I echo all of those points, and I think also for me, working with clients, and also on a personal level, kind of like the impact that chronic stress can have, metabolic dysfunction, sleep disorders that I've experienced previously, and obviously with clients, finding out what polyphenols, what adaptogens, for example, ashwagandha, what lipid-based phytonutrient formulations, which we're going to probably hear more from our experts, from Melanie Blefkin from Biogena, Dr. Christopher Shade, who's CEO and founder of Quicksilver Scientific. They will be able to not only tell you what would be the ideal protocols to use with yourself and with clients, but also what supplements and what form of supplements would be best and most effective. Because that's kind of also a question that I get asked a lot from clients. Yes, a lot of people do want to go down a food only route, but when actually they're in that chronic metabolic dysfunction phase, they need something to shift and kickstart their kind of approach to then get the ball rolling. And sometimes that supplementation is the best way to go in those chronic phases. So I think, unless there's anything else anybody wants to add, I think
just really excited to listen to this event and to see what else Dr. Deanna has. And she actually is launching a book after this. So I think she has a secondary book based on some of these concepts. So it'll be interesting for us to have a deep dive rather than just read the book, but have a deep dive on some of these concepts.
Yeah, and I'm also looking forward all the questions that all our audience are going to ask Diana, because I do believe that the most important and enjoyable part of our events is when our community comes together and then a beautiful conversation starts, because all of us as practitioners can add our point of views and our questions and our experience and better each other. So I'm really looking forward to that, to hear what our practitioners think about these concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even though all our sessions that we do, conferences, webinars, symposiums, they're all recorded, so you can watch them after the event. But I think, as Lucia's just touched on, what you miss out on if you do watch the pre-recording is that live dialogue and that opportunity to ask your questions, and then what then springs from that in terms of a whole conversation with our expert speakers. So just a reminder, we're talking about March 5th, our phytocompounds for circadian health, sleep and metabolic balance. Will be with Dr. Deanna Minich, Dr. Christopher Shade from Quicksilver Scientific, and scientific expert Melanie Blefkin from Biogena. So please do join us. If you want to go onto our website, nutritioncollective.co.uk, you can find out more information there. We'll probably put links in wherever you're watching or streaming this in the notes, how to access that information and find out more. And please do register and sign up